Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol character spotlight. Today, we are taking a look at Valkyrie, and yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get right into things. So, Valkyrie is coming in with a 3-3-3 defensive line, even across the board here, and 6 stamina. She's a 3 threat with size 2 and a medium move. Worth noting before I forget about it, on the flip side, she does lose 1 point of stamina, so she is actually a 6-5 split with 3-3-3. So not the bulkiest, but also not the squishiest. The 6 health is nice, but nothing too special there. Next, we get into her attacks. Valkyrie is coming out swinging with 2 physical attacks. The first one is a basic strike. It's a range 2 5 dice builder, and there's no rules text on this. It's very simple, but I mean, does the job. Next, she has her Spender Dragon Fang. This is a 3-cost spender. It's also range 2, but it's going to be throwing out 7 dice, so a couple more for your power. After the attack is resolved, the target character gains the bleed condition. No triggers or anything like that for that, which is nice. There's some consistency there. And then you've got the Crit Wild Flurry. After the attack is resolved, this character may make a strike attack, so you can follow it up with a 5 dice strike. Crit Wild isn't the most consistent trigger in the world, but on a 7 dicer, it's not too bad. Next, she has Asgardian Might. This is a 3-cost. Choose an interactive terrain feature or an enemy character, both of size 2 or less and within 2, and throw it small once per turn. This is solid. I mean, it's a character throw, so that's immediately nice. It's a little expensive, but she is an Asgardian, so it's not too bad, but definitely on the costlier side. Next, she has Charge. It's your standard 2-cost charge. She gets to make a move action followed by an attack action, and it is an action itself. And of course, it is once per turn because if it wasn't, that would be really good. I mean, it's already pretty good because charges are just generally quite good. But next, she has Warrior of Legend, and this is kind of Valkyrie's, thing that she does that nobody else really does. This is a 2-cost. During the next attack made by this character this turn, it may change 1 die to a hit for each crit or wild in its attack roll. This is really good. Obviously, it can be a little dice dependent. Crits and wilds are only 2 sides of the 8 sides of your attack dice, so not the most consistent thing in the world, but when you can proc this, and if you can give yourself a little bit of extra consistency here and there to help you get those, you can do some pretty crazy things with that, and we'll talk about that more when we talk about some of the models that she synergizes with, but really solid ability for just kind of being like, and here's a bunch of damage coming at you. Next, she has Asgardian, and this is just the standard Asgardian. During the power phase, gain 1 additional power, which is nice because it does mean your charge is online right out the gate. And then, even if that whiffs, you're in melee, so next round, Warrior of Legend is online right out the gate. So you've got some tools there, which is pretty cool. Valkyrie's not coming in with any tactics cards, but she is a member of 3 different affiliations, and I think she's pretty viable in all 3 of them. First up is A-Force, where She-Hulk is the leader, and She-Hulk's leadership gives you power across the board when your characters start taking damage, so that's pretty cool. Valkyrie is definitely a somewhat power-hungry model, so really appreciates that. Valkyrie's also definitely on the squishier side, so can also get a lot of value from She-Hulk's bodyguard. Similarly, in A-Force, you also have access to, I'm failing to see her, there she is, Okoye, and that's another bodyguard that can just kind of help keep Valkyrie alive a little bit because you'll notice when we were going through her card there, she doesn't really have anything in the way of defensive tech, so she can just die if you're not careful. So those are definitely a couple things that kind of help her out there. And then she gets to build up that extra power and use that extra power to use her spender and use her extra, crits and wilds ability a little bit more often. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value to her in A-Force, specifically with those 2 models and just the leadership. As far as other models are concerned, I don't think there's much else here that she really has a particular synergy with, but a lot of these other models are generally good. And one thing I always think is kind of cool is she has a very similar thing to Gamora, whereas Gamora has basically the same rule as Warrior of Legend, but it's always active and it's only for wilds instead of crits. So there's some cool things there, and I actually think a lot of the places where Valkyrie is good, Gamora is good for the same reason, but we'll save that for a future video on Gamora. Before we move on to the next affiliation, I do just want to point out, because I forgot to mention this when I was reading out the abilities, but Warrior of Legend does have one kind of drawback, is that it's an active superpower, so it's not like while you're making the attack or anything like that. So there's a few kind of things that come with that. First of all, if you get your flurry trigger, you can't pay for Warrior of Legend in between the Dragon Fang and the strike. So unfortunately, your strike won't get the benefits of Warrior of Legend, even if you had the power to do it again. The other side of that is if somebody uses an ability that ends the attack early and you don't get to roll the dice, so you know, an escort to safety or a lifesaver or eye in the sky or one of those types of abilities, unfortunately, you've just wasted 2 power and there's nothing you can do about it. So there's a couple drawbacks to that, but it is still a really powerful ability, and you definitely just want to kind of be careful with when you're using it and how you're applying it, because using that ability often you'll lose power pretty quickly, especially if you're combining it with the 3-cost Dragon Fang. She very, very easily can go through 10 power in a turn. So yeah, just something to kind of keep in mind. You don't want to be wasting that 2 power when you can avoid it. Next, for affiliations, we have her home affiliation here is Asgard. And, well, I mean, I guess technically they're all her home affiliation, but, like, when you think Valkyrie, this is probably the first place you think of. And, yeah, I think she's a solid model here. I don't think she gets quite as much out of the Asgard affiliation as she does from some of the other ones, but that doesn't mean that it's bad for her. Specifically, I don't think Thor's leadership really does all that much for her. I mean, she does hate special conditions, like a lot of them, notably Shock. Shock is just very sad for her. Similarly, she's already kind of fishing for crits, so she doesn't love Hex or anything like that. So the leadership's fine for her in that regards, but she doesn't really have any specific synergies with Thor, and I don't think it's all that big of a deal for her. So kind of mediocre on the leadership there, but she does like some of the models here. I mean, Scourge has a taunt, so that's something that can kind of help keep her alive again, as we were talking about with A-Force. So that's solid. You can also get some dice consistency from Heimdall, just giving you some rerolls here and there, and stuff like that can really help because you do get to kind of decide how you're stacking those abilities. So you can do the rerolls first, get a couple more crits and wilds, and then use her ability to turn your other dice into hits based on those crits or wilds that you've now rerolled into. So there's a few kind of layers to that that you can play with, that definitely helps out. But I don't think it's like the biggest affiliation for synergies for her. I just think there's a couple nice little things here and there. Lastly, she is a member of the Defenders. Defenders does have 2 leaderships. The first one is Doctor Strange's, which lets you spend 1 to change your attack type, and if you deal damage, you give out the Hex condition. This can be cool if she's going up against like really, really physically bulky targets. You know, it can be nice to be able to say, oh, well, this is Mystic now. Downside to that is she doesn't love having to spend the extra power on it. I don't think that's amazing for her. So it's fine. I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's terrible for her, but it's fine for her. One thing that is nice is that Doctor Strange can help keep her alive. He can add some dice to her defense, so that's pretty solid for her. I think she certainly appreciates stuff like that. But overall, I think she's just kind of fine with this one. Daredevil, on the other hand, I think she likes a lot more, notably just Marvel Knights. The leadership here is kind of really, really good. Getting a bunch of rerolls, especially on a model that has a charge, so she can always kind of place herself optimally within as many characters within range 2 of her as possible. Not only is that going to give her more rerolls, that's going to help her get her trigger with those rerolls, and then because she's got multiple characters within range 2 of her after off of that charge, because she's trying to make sure she's always in range of more than one, and you know the types of maps that Daredevil Defenders likes to play, being kind of E maps right down center lane where you're going to be able to do that more often. Um, that's also going to give you, you know, even if you did really good and you spiked someone out with the first attack, your flurry now probably has a second target. So some cool things there. I think that's really nice for her. Daredevil himself, outside of that, doesn't do much to help her. I mean, some small stuff like the baton hook has the pull, so you can pull other characters closer, so she doesn't have to spend power on charge. That's fine, but I think a lot of the times under the Marvel Knights leadership, she really doesn't mind using it to get into the position for better rerolls and things like that. So, yeah, I think for the most part, she just really likes his leadership. In terms of other models in the affiliation, I mean, as we've already talked about, you do have access to some models that can help keep her alive. stuff like Luke Cage. She does hand out a guaranteed bleed, so there's some synergy with Blade there, or if you wanted to try around playing around with her in Midnight Suns or something like that. Um, she's fine there, I think. Technically she's a pseudo safe grab because she has two powers, so she can double move, pick up a thing, and then bump in the Knight back, which is his leadership there. So there's some cool like kind of synergies there, I guess, but mostly it's the bleed thing. But yeah, other models in the affiliation. I don't know if there's very many that are kind of jumping out at me. She doesn't need the extra power too much from Wong. She's pretty good on that front because she already has her charge online right from the gate. So I think for the most part, she's really just looking at the leadership and maybe, something like Luke Cage to help keep her alive. But nothing too crazy is jumping out at me here. Taking a look at some of the other affiliations, I think the things you really want to look at are things that are going to help her get that trigger more often, or not trigger rather, but Warrior of Legend. Anything that can boost the Warrior of Legends to, giving you extra rerolls, giving you extra just like dice conversion things, really going to push her damage to another level to the point where as a 3 threat, she'll be able to very, I'm not going to say consistently because it's still very dice dependent, but very effectively and efficiently fight models much stronger than her. Now, of course, keep in mind with this that she will just die to these models still, but I don't think there's too much you can do for her defensively. She kind of just has mediocre dice and a mediocre health pool, so there's not much you can do to really keep her alive outside of having models like bodyguards and things like that. But, those can always be splashed in if they're not already home in that affiliation. And I think that's just one of those things you're going to have to keep in mind when playing her. So when it comes to dice consistency and making sure you're hitting specific symbols, I think one of the first places you want to look at is Steve 3 Avengers. Obviously, I know I talk about Avengers for a lot of characters in this series, but that's partially just because I play them. But I do think Steve 3 is probably one of, if not the best leadership in the game for trigger consistency. And no exception here. If you rolled a hit, you can now change one of your other dice to a wild or a critical, and then because of that, you can change another die to a hit. So now you're getting two hits for the cost of one power. This is really efficient for building power if you're using those builder attacks. This is really efficient for helping you get the Dragon Fang trigger, because, I mean, if you were one symbol away, suddenly you've got it, and you're getting two extra damage, which, yeah. I think there's a lot of good things to like here with Steve 3 and Valkyrie, so there's definitely a lot of value to his leadership with her. In terms of the rest of the affiliation, once again, you do have access to a handful of kind of bodyguard style models, things like Cage or Original Steve, which obviously you're not running Original Steve and Steve 3 at the same time because that's not how this game works. But he's there, so if you're running maybe, I don't know, a dual leadership roster, she's still viable on the other side of it, for example. But yeah, I think the big thing really is just that leadership. And you have some other models that can help you re-roll stuff like Invincible Iron Man and whatnot to give you a little bit of extra consistency outside of that as well. Another kind of interesting one is something like Wakanda under M'Baku. His leadership basically kind of gives you a pseudo warrior of legend in itself. If you get one or more wilds, you can change another die to a hit. So this basically means your one wild can now convert into two hits, which is cool, but you do still need to roll the initial wild for that. Thankfully, Wakanda does have a few tools for that. Things like Shuri giving you a reroll aura, if you want to use that. And then also, just again, as a pivot leadership, you have Black Panther giving you rerolls there as well. So I think there's a few interesting things you can do with her there. Similarly, if we look at Criminal Syndicate, MODOK 2, I believe, has a very similar thing where, yeah, if you're contesting an objective token and you get a wild, you can change one of your other dice to a hit or shield. So there's obviously some good things there with, again, the same idea of one wild is now two successes. And, that's just pretty good. Now, the other thing is you're gonna have to keep in mind for that. Um, you're not gonna be getting extra consistency on getting those wilds, but still very effective when you do. Suddenly that one success is actually three. So yeah, that's pretty solid. In terms of in affiliation help, I don't actually think there's all that much in Criminal Syndicate. Turns out criminals don't love to help each other, but you can always splash something in like that, so you have options. While on the topic of Criminal Syndicate, I think Shadowland Daredevils is a worthy little shout out here, because this ability lets you reroll skull results. So it gives you a reroll when you're attacking characters that are contesting or holding objectives, which is already good to help you with that consistency. But let's say you've got your crits or wilds and you have more dice than you can convert because of a skull or something like that. You can reroll that skull, and now even if it blanks out, as long as it's not another skull, Warrior of Legend will let you convert it. So it kind of is a bit of a win more thing. Like you've already rolled really good, but there's a skull or two stopping it from being amazing. Um, this can kind of help fix that. It's a smaller one, but definitely still meaningful. So weirdly enough, I think she likes both of the Daredevils a lot for some reason, and really just their leaderships. But yeah, it's a cool little thing. And of course, we can't talk about consistency with that trigger without talking about Cabal, more specifically Red Skull 3. So Red Skull Three's leadership is basically Reality Gem. Not quite. It's got a few more limitations than Reality Gem does, but basically you get to treat a skull result as a crit result. This is a big deal because that allows you to now take what would have been a fail on the die. Not only are you now treating it as a success and you're getting to add another die to the pool, but now you're also getting Warrior of Legend off of this. Really, really good stuff. She doesn't love having to lose a power afterwards. That's not her favorite thing in the world, but it's really, really good for her still. I've been playing around with her under Red Skull 3 and she is a lot of fun there. She does so much damage. It's actually amazing. So definitely one of the best places to play her. I do strongly encourage it. And it turns out in Cabal there are a few other tools that she kind of likes. I mean, we already mentioned Scourge under when we were talking about Asgard, but you also just have access to Baron Zemo here, who has a reroll aura. So cool, you now get even more consistency on that. On top of that, you also have access to Zola, who can also give you rerolls, mind you, at the cost of possibly getting bleed. But yeah, you have a few kind of things you can play around with there that'll definitely help her consistency a little bit more. And I think the final one we're going to mention here, and obviously we're not going to get all of them, because turns out a lot of leaderships are actually good for stuff like this. But the final one we're going to mention is Guardians of the Galaxy. I think she's solid here. Now, obviously, Guardians have a really stacked roster on their own, but a Winging It token on her can really go a long way. It gives her a little bit of extra bulk if she needs it, or it can help her get those Warrior of Legend triggers. So I think there's a lot of value to having her there as one of your options. She's certainly a solid model, and she's definitely not replacing Groot, but I could definitely see an argument for her over someone like Drax, depending on the different, situation that you're in. And that turns out those are all the threes in affiliation that aren't the leader. So, yeah, there's definitely an argument to her. If you have the empty slot and you're not sure who to put it in, and you want someone who can kind of go up and do a bunch of damage, she can definitely fill that slot there. So I think she's a worthy include if you decide to do so. But yeah, so that is Valkyrie. At the end of the day, looking at Valkyrie here, we have a model that can hit like an absolute truck, especially if you can give her the support she needs, whether that's coming from Red Skull 3 or a bunch of rerolls just kind of stacked on top of each other, or you just roll dice really well. Turns out a lot of characters are good when you do that though. Um, but yeah, she's got a lot of really good things. I mean, with the flurry, I mean she can potentially take down four targets in a single turn if well, five if you add the throw in there as well. But let's not get into Dreamland too much there. But the point is, it's stuff that she's capable of potentially doing, and being able to hit, more than one or two targets in a single turn definitely has some value to it, and I think that's something that's nice about Valkyrie. She's got control, which is great if you have the power and you didn't kill the thing you wanted to kill. Well, you can throw them away anyways, or you can use the sword to help you kill them because that's also good. So she's got a little bit of that going on. Definitely one of the biggest drawbacks is that she's fairly squishy. For a three threat, there definitely are squishier threes, but not by much. 333 is a very soft defensive line, and having 6 health on the front is great, but only having 5 on the back is leaving a lot to be desired here. But I mean, at the end of the day, for what she outputs, that's kind of acceptable. And other things like having Asgardian being, an okay advanced R&D user and things like that is also a little bit of extra value she can kind of add to a team there. Mind you, with the charge turn one, a lot of the time she likes her power, but still just kind of things worth keeping in mind. But yeah, overall, I think she is a really solid piece. She's definitely a little bit on the dicier side, but if you can fix that, she can feel really, really good to play. Like I said, I've been running her in Red Skull 3 Cabal, and she is so much fun there. She hits like an absolute truck. It's absolutely amazing, and I definitely recommend it. If you haven't tried her there already, it's a lot of fun. But speaking of places that you may have tried her. Let me know down below. Did I miss anyone who synergizes really, really well with her? I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. Always interested to see where you guys like to play these characters. So let me know where your favorite places to play Valkyrie are, where she's seen success for you, or maybe where you've tried her and she didn't see success. Love to hear what you guys think. But that is going to do it for my portion of this video. So hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do character spotlights like these every week, and we have battle reports on the weekends. So if you like either of those things, feel free to jump on in. But otherwise, that is it for this video. So once more, I hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, have a great day. Peace.